I've just moved into my new apartment, and I found the sheet yesterday when cleaning one of the old vents in the bathroom. I'm OCD like that, and I can't handle the thought of something being dirty. It was two-sided and written with sloppy handwriting, as if the person was in a rush. Even though it was a bizarre place, I figured the previous tenants must have accidentally left it. I was about to toss it in the trash, but I couldn't help myself scanning the contents of the sheet. I was due a break as I had been at it for several hours, so I moved some boxes, sat down, and began to read. It went as follows. It was Friday night and I had just got back from an 8-hour work shift at the gas station. I was working whilst up to my neck with college assignments, but money had been low recently, so my manager asked if I could do the extra shift, and I didn't refuse. After a long night of dealing with some strange characters and stacking shelves until my arms ached, I wanted nothing more than to crash in my bed. Life had been tough recently, losing my father to cancer and girlfriend moving out just the week after, so I tended to drown my problems by being proactive, even if it meant working myself to death. I got in, made a snack, and forced myself to touch up an essay I was writing that was due the following week. After some time, I realized I had been sat behind my laptop for a while. At this point, it was around 2 a.m. and my body begged me to stop. That's when I figured I'd call it a night. I went to brush my teeth and change into some normal clothes. It was then when I first noticed it. I couldn't exactly tell you what I felt when I hovered around the light switch. It was more of a thought, like my subconscious mind was warning me of something I hadn't picked up on. My body shivered and I visualized a cold breath down my spine. It was weird, but I brushed it off on my lack of sleep and promptly undressed. Once I had got out of my tacky 7-Eleven uniform and into something more comfortable, I paused for a second, turned off the light, and jumped into bed. I am by no means an insomniac. When I was a kid, I was always that friend at sleepovers that was out in 5 minutes while you all stayed up talking about which girls you had a crush on. It was one of my perks that I cherished. I could sleep like a baby almost anywhere, unfazed by the noise, temperature, or anything that might hinder a normal person from sleeping. My mother used to call me Sleeping Beauty as a joke, but for some reason, this night was different. I lay there for a few minutes, maybe more, tossing and turning, blanket over me and eyes shut. My mind, however, was racing. I got the eerie feeling that someone or something was watching me. I didn't want to open my eyes. The room felt cold, unreasonably cold. I just wanted to wake up and be at my mundane routine like every weekend. I remember how my girlfriend had always made a point to make me do chores, and the habit had stuck. Slowly, fed up feeding my irrational fears, I opened my eyes. The room was... I couldn't describe it. Something was out of place. Despite the lack of light, I could see that I was most certainly not in my room. I know it sounds crazy. I too hardly believed what I was seeing either. It sure as hell looked like my room, but it wasn't. Through the pale moonlight, I could make out that my wardrobe was on the wrong side of the wall, and my chest of IKEA drawers were on the floor. I couldn't fathom what I was seeing. The whole thing was like a cheap knockoff imitation of my room, but all wrong. I shot up stiff. It was then when I heard it. A blood-curdling groan. It sounded like a wounded animal, but sinister, as if the strange sound meant me harm. I scanned the room but saw nothing. I went to turn on the light, but just as I was about to flip the switch, I thought I heard it again. That same blood-curdling sound. Light flooded the room from the bulb and I felt everything go back to normal. Tonight was just one of those strange nights I'm sure everyone gets once in a while, when you just feel that the whole world is out to get you. I went to get a glass of water from the kitchen and lightly chuckled at myself for being so immature. A 23-year-old man thinking he was being haunted by the paranormal. After gulping down the water and letting it moisten my now dry mouth, I headed back to bed again, trying to salvage the last few hours of sleep I could catch before having to get up. The light was still on. As my finger rested on the switch, I felt it. It was as if my mind was perceiving something that I wasn't, warning me. I was annoyed now. It was nearly 3 a.m. and I had spent the last hour behaving like a child. Without a second thought, the room turned dark and I was once again in the warmth of my bed. Breathe in, breathe out. Fresh air poured into my lungs and was then released. Eyes closed, fresh air. In, out, repeat. No thoughts. But the air was too fresh, with a cold, chilly aftertaste. It was as if I was outside and it resembled nothing like the stuffy air of my small apartment. I was skeptical, but too proud to say spooked. Again, I brushed it off. Deep down, however, I knew something was seriously off. I was just about drifting off when I heard whispering. At least I thought that's what it was, but it sounded more like the sound a sleep talker would make. Slow and unintelligible. It wasn't me. I wished I was asleep. Instead, I was hearing voices that didn't exist. They couldn't exist, could they? I lived alone. They must have been a figment of my sleep-deprived imagination. Surely. The mind does strange things when it's not rested, like that sleep experiment the Russian scientists did on the inmates. They had been starved of precious sleep for days and ended up losing their marbles. Just then, something stroked my exposed foot. I think I died inside. It felt like a wet and slimy hand had grabbed my ankle. It felt small, and before I could compare it to anything, I sprang up facing the foot of my bed. An automatic reflex I wish I hadn't done. There, standing in my room, were two figures. One was of small frame, like that of a child. The other was freakishly tall, and not normal tall, but Shaquille O'Neal tall. It was as if he, or it, was hunched over to gain a better look at me. I froze. I could hear my blood pumping and my ears throbbing. I focused my eyes and got a better look at the two things in my room. The giant one was holding the small one's hand. Its sickly lean frame was not in proportion with its body. I could just about make out their faces, and all I can say is otherworldly. Stuff of urban legend. Stuff you expect to read about in horror books, not see staring at you in your damn bedroom. They had grotesque white skin with a damp texture as if it was made out of paper mache. Small black beady eyes that looked like shriveled raisins. No mouths, no noses. Just those eyes. Lifeless, staring at me. I wondered if they could see me in the dark, sensing the terror that I felt exuding out of me. Just then, the smaller one edges toward me, now pointing right at me, dragging the other one behind it. How was I going to get out of this? Was this it? How I would die? I then remembered how turning on the light had gotten rid of those strange groans, and turning it off had brought about these things. If I could only make it to the light in time. It was now or never. I counted to 3. 1. They got closer. 2. heart pounding. They are a matter of feet away. 3. I made a beeline for the light and pound on the light switch. Nothing. It can't be. I do it again and again, faster, but no result. Their heads are turning now. Slow rhythmic movements as they edge toward me, and that blood-curdling noise they make. I run to the living room and try the switch there, but the same outcome. Darkness prevails. I thought of the safest place I could go to, my car. As I made my way to the front door, I saw that it was wide open. To my horror, I found that outside there were more of those grotesque, human-like things. A lifeless swarm just waiting outside in the corridor. They too were now creeping their way in, like a bunch of predators who knew their prey was helpless. I could have got a knife from the kitchen and maybe defended myself, but it meant passing my bedroom again, and the original 2 creatures were now already outside and making their way towards me. The cold air rushed through me and I went with my last resort, the bathroom. I sprinted in and locked it. Frantic, small thumps began knocking at the door. They were patient, very patient. I looked up and my heart sank. It had just hit me that my bathroom had no windows. I couldn't help but stretch a broken smile against my face. I'm going to die because I cheaped out for the crappy apartment with no windows in the bathroom. More thumps. I found the paper and pen on the floor a few months later. That's funny, I didn't remember leaving them there, but was I really in a position to question reality at this point? My fate was probably long determined. I've written all that I have to say now, the last line read. I can't see the morning light seeping through the crack of the door. It's still dark and cold, awfully cold. Just those rhythmic thumps every so often that keep me awake. It's been hours, or maybe days. I've lost track of time. I get up only to try the tap, but nothing comes out. I don't think I'll last much longer. I'm fighting the urge to just open the door and face whatever monsters want to get me. Whatever you do, don't turn off the light. I put the sheet down and thought for a moment. I was kind of creeped out, but I guess some kid must have been just playing a prank on me. It was getting late and I needed rest. I went to my room, the only room in the house. Boxes were still stacked everywhere. I had made little progress. Before I turned the light out to head for bed, I laughed. The silly story had actually messed with me. I proceeded to turn off the light and hop into bed. Now it's cold. Too cold.